Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about comic books. We talk about comic books sometime. We used to talk about them more often than we do now because the comic book industry is very sad.
But what's to talk about?
Well, what we're going to talk about is how the comic book industry is doing it wrong. And
they've been. Like, newsflash.
They're chasing the wrong things. For the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, the comic book industry has kind of pivoted into chasing YA graphic novels and that sort of thing, basically catering to librarians and kind of, I guess, elitist reviewers.
It's basically like the Academy Awards for comic books, where like the movies that get picked as the winners aren't always the movies that are the best movies or the ones that are the most successful. They're just the movies that, you know, preach a certain political point of view or agenda, or, you know, have somebody involved in it that everybody's kissing their ass right now for whatever reason. It's kind of like that, but in book form.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how this, in some way, has actually, I think, affected comics for the worse, and this is where the direction that DC Comics wants to go in, which I think is a bad idea. And we can compare that with what Boom has done with Berserker, where they sold 600,000 copies.
But they all scream about that.
But they all screeched about it. They're like, how dare you take money away from us?
No, because their idea is if you didn't back Berserker, you were going to back their books that are like these ones we're going to talk about. Super agenda-driven, you know, books that no one really actually wants to read because they're not really probably usually fun, and you know, or they're historical or whatever, and people just don't care. And they have this idea that if people don't back Berserker, they're going to be suddenly interested in their book.
Yeah, and that's not the way this works. What happens is people just walk away from the comic book industry. So we're going to talk about that before we get into it. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 175,000 subs.
Woohoo.
Thank you for the support. It's much appreciated. We do talk comics. There hasn't been a lot of comics news that's been positive, but Berserker is a bright spot. 600,000 copies. The only other comic that sold that much recently is Star Wars #1 from Marvel, and they had to use Loot Crate.
I was going to say, that's the one. It was a Loot Crate, right? Yeah.
Yes.
They used Loot Crate, so they counted those as sales.
3 times the sales of the High Republic, maybe 6 times, depends on who you ask, of High Republic #1, for a comic that a lot in the industry tried to get canceled. They didn't think Boom had any right to go to Kickstarter with Berserker. Now, it was coming out either way, but the buzz of this thing making millions of dollars and the buzz of Keanu Reeves being attached to it drove it to over 500,000 copies. That's like early 90s numbers.
Yes.
It's crazy.
That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. But Boom said because we sold so many, we're going to have to push it. We're going to have to push it back a little bit because 500,000 books, over 500,000 books is a lot of books.
They push it back a month, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so compare that, you know, and look at what's going on with manga and look at the stuff people actually want to buy. Manga is going through the roof. Berserker went through the roof. We're seeing crowdfunders, you know, on Indiegogo that aren't talked about, do 6 figures easy. And compare that to what's going on in the mainstream industry and what they're chasing right now. This article was out there the other day on Bleeding Cool. Cy Spurrier, who is a DC Comics writer, talking about how the comic book industry, the mainstream comic book industry, is kind of imploding, and he doesn't even know what he's going to do. He said on Reddit that his stupid, colossal effing mistake was to assume I was still living in the 90s when comics got at least a couple dozen issues to flex, or comics creators got a couple dozen issues to flex your muscles and find their fullest audience before anyone quibbled about profitability.
Well, why do they care? Why are they claiming they care about profitability? They don't. They keep picking make these stupid choices and picking these people that aren't very good artists, aren't very good writers, and then they don't do well, and they cancel it. Like, so, I mean, profitability isn't what they're worried about anyway.
Yeah, I guess he went on to talk about the direction that DC's going in, and we said before, they're chasing librarians. They're chasing the librarians. They're chasing librarians.
That's not a very smart business model because librarians don't, I mean, there's not that many there's a lot of libraries and stuff, but that's not, you know, you're not buying copies for every person. It's like you're buying one copy and a bunch of people are sharing it.
Yeah, I don't understand how you're going to sell a bunch of copies of a book when you've basically got, you know, 200 people reading one comic book. You know, they're not going to, most kids aren't going to go check out a graphic novel library and be like, you know what, I love that so much, I'm going to beg my parents to go buy a copy of it. They'll just check it out again. Or they'll just move on to the next, free book.
Or they'll go to webtoons, like a lot of the kids do.
Or they'll go to webtoons. You know, that's the audience they're chasing. DC now, in particular, and they got a lot of pushback on this. I Am Not Starfire. They've got the Zatanna book, which actually got pushed back too. And this is clearly, I don't know what's up with the Debbie Gibson hat, but they're pushing this one back too. The order's on, so I think they're even kind of reconsidering where they're going with things. But I guess we could talk about that even with our experience in comics.
ALA, okay, here we go.
Where the comic book industry, once mainstream publishing got involved, and it's this symbiotic relationship between mainstream publishing in New York and Hollywood. And it's all about getting the book picked up and vetted by New York publishers so you can go to Hollywood and get a movie deal.
But even then, these books they're picking, though, are not ones that are going to sell a lot.
No.
Basically, they're high art or they're political or whatever. And that's usually what's involved in these. And not saying they're all bad, because some of them are probably pretty good.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's not about how they sell or how good they actually are. It's about who did the book. And what the message is. We found this ourselves. We were okay and had an agent until I think the agent realized that, you weren't black. And then,
Everybody's surprised. I don't know why you're surprised. I don't think I sound.
I don't know, but there was a definite behavior shift when he saw the picture on the pitch book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just because they're trying to sign these people that they're even if they're not good, doesn't matter if they have the right check boxes. That's what matters. And then these people go out and do books, and some of them do really well because they're really good books and they're really talented people. And some of them don't do very well because they're not very good books, they're not talented people, but they looked a certain way or acted a certain way or are married to a certain person, and there you go.
Yeah, so that's kind of what happened in comics. That's kind of the unified theory of everything. Is comics stopped being about sales, like massive amounts of sales, and they started chasing certain demographics that maybe didn't sell as much, but they got fist bumps for it, and they got awards for it.
Or they see somebody that they get a book, somebody gets in there, and then even if their books don't earn out and don't sell worth shit, they give them new books. I'm like, instead of bringing somebody else that's new in because they're so and so, they didn't sell the first time around.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and we need to be more like the Japanese. We need to be like, how many copies did you sell? Fuck the agenda. How many copies did you sell? Right. How much money did you make the company?
Do people like your story or do they not like your story?
And, it's very simple. Did you sell a lot of copies? And yeah, getting on a librarian's good side, I guess, can help. But, there's so many stories of creators, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, that they're award-winning creators who are dirt poor. Mm-hmm. And they've left
the
comics.
Books don't sell.
The books don't sell. They might have all these awards. You can be an Eisner winning homeless person, I guess.
You can't eat the awards.
No, The Beat put this out a couple days ago.
Oh, it's The Beat that explains
The
everything.
Beat, which has gone all in on mainstream publishing.
And they're up
library.
their asses so hard. I mean, they're their hats now.
We were part of this scene. Then we realized there's no money in it.
Yeah, there is really no money in it. Very little money.
Very few Raina Telgemeyers. I mean,
and even then, I would argue they pushed her because she had a marketing deal and because the libraries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And book orders.
Yeah, and now it's Dog Man, and that's, kids are picking it up at Walmart or whatever. But the vast, vast, vast majority of graphic novelists making YA graphic novels are making jack shit money.
Well, this is the list for adults.
Yeah, now we want adults to... I don't know too many adults that are going to pick up Be Gay, Do Comics with this cartoony art in it, but that's the big one. I could see something like this. This looks more adult. Mm-hmm. Come Home India. This looks kind of adult. X-Men.
I know. I'm surprised X-Men made it on the list.
X-Men. This looks kind of cool. Maybe I'd pick something like that up. We got Kent State, political, biographical thing. What is this? Making Comics by Linda Berry. Parable of the Sower. More space stuff, and Something is Killing the Children.
That one's been around for a bit, hasn't it?
It actually sounds pretty decent. I'd like to read about Something Killing the Children. No, I wouldn't.
Oh, you wouldn't?
No, we wouldn't. So those are books, but these are librarian approved, and it's look. I mean, this is the adult list, but mostly it's about the YA stuff. And just to put this out there again, we've talked about it before, but we have a lot of people following us that they think the way to break into comics is to go do a bunch of indie looking stuff and then go get a mainstream publishing deal. We thought that too, until we found out how much money was not in it.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the quote on the cover, a parable for the Trump era.
Yeah.
It's called Livestock.
Yeah, so this is a graphic... A graphic novelist. She's an award-winning
I'm sure
graphic
she's
novelist.
award-winning when they have that thing on the cover.
And she was only making $10,000 a year, U.S.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually very normal. In fact, this is shockingly normal. I think
that was kind of high for 3 years.
Yeah, the average advance on a graphic novel for places like Scholastic or whatever, I've heard it used to be like $20,000-$25,000 a book advance. I've heard now that the average advance can go as low as like $5,000 or $10,000.
Now, keep in mind, that's for a book that might take you 3 years to do, and you only get part of it, and then you get it in increments, and your agent takes a cut.
Yes.
And taxes.
And, creating a graphic novel yourself is a full-time job, basically.
Mm-hmm. You've done it.
Yeah. Like, you can't, like, go work a day job, come home, and draw 2 pages of a comic. I mean, you can, but it's going to be a pain in the ass, and you're going to burn yourself out, and it's probably not going to be your best work.
You have to have a lot of stamina, and you have to be a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Driven. Yeah. You have to be somebody who's very, committed to what you're doing. And a lot of people, I'm just going to be honest, aren't.
No, they want to go on Twitter all day.
Or they want to play video games or watch movies. And you have to be very, and that's the thing like we say about YouTube. Like, you do three videos a day and you do a blog and you do this other stuff. And it's like we do. And it's mostly just us. But doesn't mean we don't have much of a life outside of that. But you have to be very, very committed to what you're doing, or because, you'll burn out very quickly.
Yeah, you also have to be good at time management. You can't waste a lot of time on shit that's not going to pay. And again, we've got so many artists out there that are like on Twitter more than they are at the desk doing their drawing, their writing, whatever. Then they complain they don't have any time. I'm like, well, if you're on Twitter all day, that's why you don't have any time. But again, compare this to 600,000 copies of Berserker. Compare this to new creators coming in to Indiegogo, YouTubers making over $100,000.
Basically a platform, but still. And it's like, and not just that. When we looked at the book list of the most popular graphic novels, they were always ones that were like My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, things like that. There was a couple of books that were American books on there, but a lot of them were not. But they're the number one selling books, not these.
No, and we're seeing this kind of mentality bleed off into the mainstream again. We're seeing DC chasing this. They're not going to make much money on this book. You're not going to make DC. I don't know what you're doing. You're not going to make much money. You're going to sell a bunch of copies to librarians, and that is it.
But they only going to buy one copy or a couple copies.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Even a big library might buy like 2 or 3 copies, and that's for how many thousands of people.
Right.
If you want to sell a lot of books, DC and Marvel. Do shit like Boom, give people what they want, and you'll sell a bunch of comics. But you're more interested in getting woke points at this point.
And getting awards that even it was funny. We always saw this too. The Eisners is a joke. First of all, it's like the Academy Awards. It's a big joke.
Yeah, it's a joke.
And it's pretty much the studios winning everything. And even if you have like the web comic, what they call them now, digital comic category. It used to be you only could apply for that, if you weren't allowed, you couldn't put like digital comics, web comics in best inker or best letterer. I think now they might let you do that. I don't know. I haven't paid attention much.
Yeah, maybe.
Best story. But it would happen that these people would always, not always, but most often win or be nominated. And you'd look and they already had a book deal with the studio. It's
promotional tool.
It used to be you didn't have to. It used to be you're just actually legitimately good. And now it's just a promotional tool.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see where comics are. I mean, obviously people want comics. They'll buy comics, but they're not buying the shit that the big two are giving them anymore. And we're going to have a lot of people get displaced from comics because, frankly, the money's not there. Just because you want to make comics, just because you might be okay at making comics, doesn't mean the sales are there. And we need to go back to what sells. And that's what gets published, frankly. I don't know. Anything else you want to add?
No.
All right. So we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, and we'll talk later.
Bye.